Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Women in Tech Spotlight. Today, I have with me Celine Pypaert. She is a security and compliance tech specialist at Microsoft. Welcome, Celine.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity.
Hello, Celine. You work as a security and compliance specialist. Before we get into that, I would like to talk to you about your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I recently joined Microsoft about just over 2 months ago. So as a security and compliance tech specialist, as part of the Modern Work Solutions organization for public sector, so specifically serving local and regional government here in the UK. And before that, I was at VMware as a security solution engineer, so as part of the VMware security business unit, otherwise known as VMware Carbon Black. And before that, I actually did a 1-year internship as a systems engineer for VMware in the core UKI organization. And before that, I did a bit of pen testing, which is like the kind of more practical, ethical hacking side of cybersecurity.
Okay. So you did the ethical hacking at VMware or somewhere else before you would join VMware?
Somewhere else. So it was actually a short internship. It was for a small, kind of like a startup, so a small business here in the UK. So they're a small cryptography firm. It's called Dupree, which is actually part of Genus One. So it's a really small company. And but that was my first tech job, and that's how I kind of got my foot in the door. And I did that as part of my studies.
Okay, that sounds cool. We'll get into that a little bit later. Tell me a little bit about your family background. Did you grow up in the UK? Where are you from? Do you have siblings? Do you have kids? Do you have a dog?
Cool. Yeah, so I'm actually the oldest of 6 children. And yeah, so the oldest, which means you're the lab rat, you're the experiment child, And so I was actually born in the UK. I was here as a small child, and while my father was finishing his studies and getting into his career here, so he was a scientist, he was a biochemist, and then we moved to Switzerland and then to Belgium, which is originally where my parents are from. So my first language is actually French. And then when I was 11, we moved to the US. And this is where my accent comes from, because I forgot the English that I knew in England. And I basically had to learn English all over again in the US at age 11. And so that's where I got this American accent. And now I mix it with a bit of my French. And so I just have a weird accent. And people always ask me, where are you from? Where are you from? I moved back to Belgium in my mid-20s and then to the UK at 27. So back to the UK. And I really feel like this is my home. I've been here for 6 years now. And yeah, I've been more time in the UK than where my parents are from. So I basically feel like this is my home. Yeah.
Oh, that's such an interesting background. And actually, I love your accent. It's very smooth. And you're right, you can't really tell where you're from. There's a slight French tinge, but then there's the American accent. Nice, actually. Yeah, so wow, oldest of 6 siblings, that is special. Are they all girls or girls and boys? What is the ratio?
Yeah, so there's only 2 boys, so 4 of us. And yeah, much to my dad's chagrin, until they finally had a boy. My dad was so happy after 3 consecutive girls, and then finally a boy. And yeah, so mostly girls. And actually, oh, sorry, there's an alarm sound. So yeah, so a bit of a backstory. I actually lost my father when I was 20 to cancer. And this is partly also why I moved around quite a bit after that, because after that, my mother and all my siblings moved back to Europe, and I was basically left in the US by myself at age 20 in the middle of my studies. So yeah, so it was a bit of a bit of a bit of a detracting path. It's just one of those things you don't expect, but it happens. It's life. So
yeah, it happens, but it's still hard. I mean, you were really young, being alone in the US, studying at 20, and the whole family after such a time again. That's actually really hard. So yeah. Well, life may be, throw us a curveball, but this is something that I mean, it shows that you are strong. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. It teaches you that resilience, and it kind of forced me into, I guess, adulthood. Like, it forced me to, be independent a bit sooner, I guess.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I like to look at the positive side of it. But since then my mother's remarried, she's back in Belgium and she's
Mhm.
happy, and yeah, so it's all good.
Great.
Mhm.
So you were saying you were in the middle of university when this happened, when your father passed away and your mother and your siblings moved back to Belgium, or to Switzerland. I
Belgium, yeah.
Belgium, yeah. So I was wondering, tell us a little bit about your educational background. So obviously, most of your schooling was in the US, I guess, since you were 11 when you got there.
Yeah,
What kind of
yeah.
school did you go to? Did you do at university?
Yeah, so I went to, your regular state school. I played ice hockey. I did varsity ice hockey, and I did hockey for 4 years. So that was my big passion was sports. And then I started at uni. So I went to Southern Connecticut State University. And it was funny because when I looked at unis, I actually looked at unis more because of the sports, because back then sports was like my thing. This is before I got into tech. And I had decided to do psychology. So I had done the advanced psychology, like the equivalent of an A level. So I had done that at school, and I did a bunch of other A level equivalency as well. Which is like it's like the high. It's what you do, in the UK, for example, at
Yeah, yeah,
age,
yeah.
the examination to get into uni. Yeah, and so I decided to do psychology because at the time I thought, oh, I want to become a psychologist or do some research, but I wasn't really quite sure. I just thought, oh, I'm good at it, so I'm gonna do that. And so I studied that for about 2 years. But then I actually stopped. So yeah, so again, it's partly because of what happened, with my dad and my family moving back. So I actually kind of because of religious reasons, I actually married at a young age. So I married at 20. And it was a really long story, but yeah, just it was also around the time that you had the financial crisis, and then we actually lost a family home. So among that, I kind of had basically in the US, there was a lot of hardship, and so I ended up moving even into my at the time husband's family home. So it was just, as you can imagine, curveball after curveball, and eventually, so my studies were disrupted. As you know, in the United States, it's quite expensive to study, and healthcare is expensive, and I was on my own. And so I thought, I'm just, so I actually stopped because of that. And then I decided I'm just going to work, just to pay the bills and just to get by. And so I guess at a young age, I had decided I felt like I had no choice but to give up on my dreams, kind of. I could have probably gone back to Belgium, maybe moved into my mom's, but I was at that point, all I knew was the United States. So I thought, that's a bit of a risk. I've never lived in Europe as an adult, my language, it's not as good as English. And so it was just too scary. So I just stayed in the US and I just managed to get by, and always thinking, I'll go back to school, I'll go back to uni and I'll finish. And then eventually, so it's kind of a long path, but eventually, by my mid-20s, things were not going well. Obviously, got married too young. I didn't have any kids, so in a way, for myself personally, I'm thankful for it because it made everything else easier for me, obviously. And yeah, so at 25, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna move back to Belgium. Be close to my family. So I finally made that jump, moved back to Belgium. And it was actually while I was there that I started developing an interest in tech and cybersecurity eventually. um, yeah, I started getting really interested by IT and programming, and security, but I just wasn't sure if it was something I could do. Um, I eventually then moved to the UK later on, and I took a job in e-commerce customer service. And as part of that job, I actually had to do some counterfeit research. Helping the legal team take down counterfeit websites, helping stop fraudulent orders. And I actually really liked that aspect of it. I noticed that a lot of customers would easily fall for scams. And that's when I got that view of how easy it is to scam people. And that's kind of like the human side. You can kind of say it is a human side of security, like when you get a phishing email, a phishing SMS. Um, and that kind of piqued my interest. And around that same time here in the UK is when I also got interested in cybersecurity. And I thought, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. There's a whole field about this. There's these hackers, there's these people who are using the hacking skills, but but for good, you know, to find these security holes and patch them up and secure them before the bad guys, you know, exploit them. And yeah, so a whole new, like, it was almost like a rabbit hole, you know. I just, you know, it's like when you find something on Wikipedia and you just keep clicking, clicking, clicking. Oh my gosh, this exists. Wow, this is amazing. And I just kept learning, and, you know, then it was down tutorial paths and, you know, just YouTube videos and reading and reading. And then I got interested in coding, and I started dabbling with, you know, making websites. And so it was just like one thing after another. And, you know, there was Linux as well. I fell in love with Linux, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's open source. Anyone can use it. You can customize it. You know, command line. When I discovered command line, that's when I realized I can actually have power over my machine and not just be a user. You know, not just be at the mercy of my machine if it's broken or something goes wrong and I don't know what's going on. And yeah, so it was just a door opened, and I just I just walked in it, and I never looked back. And at that point I thought, you know what, I really want to get into cybersecurity or technology, but how am I going to do it? I don't have qualifications beyond A levels. You know, I stopped my studies, and it was psychology. And that's when I decided I'm going to go back to uni at age 29 here in the UK, and I'm going to study computer science. And I actually got into the course because I had some A levels in chemistry, physics, maths. Yeah, and part of me thought, did I make a big mistake? You know, is it too late? Am I too old? I'm 29. I should be worried about other things. You know, I should be past this stage. And I kind of felt like I had missed out, or I should have done this sooner. But I thought, if I never try, I might regret it for the rest of my life. So I thought, it's never too late, and I'm going to do it. So yeah.
Wow, you have led such an interesting life.
Yeah, I know.
I
It's
don't know where to start with my next question.
okay.
One thing that I was thinking about when you said you studied psychology and then you got interested in security when you were working in this fraud department,
Mhm.
do you see that there is some connection between human psychology and security? Is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that question up, because I was going to touch on that as well. That's a really good point, because when it comes to technology, and I'm sure you know, but in technology, it's all about the people at the end. You know, it's created by people, it's made for people, and it is a huge part of security. It's even trying to get into the hacker's mind. You know, why are they doing this? Anticipating their next move, making sure you're one step ahead. It's this constant cat and mouse, keeping up to the latest technique or the latest threat. And it can be quite hard in the field, but yeah, funnily enough, I do find that what I learned in psychology is helping me now, because it's helping me with understanding the motive behind people's actions and behavior. And it's helping me especially understand the social engineering side of security, which is that kind of part of when you're trying to manipulate someone or trying to find a human vulnerability and exploit it. You know, such as, here's an example. Last year during COVID, at the start of COVID, there were so many more COVID-related hacks and scams happening, like phishing attacks. You know, click on this coronavirus map, but it was actually it had malicious threats in it, and so many people fell for it because of that sense of urgency, because of taking advantage of people's sense of panic. And that's where social engineering is really it's kind of scary, but yeah. So yeah, there's definitely a big link.
Yeah, this is such an interesting aspect of security. I am also very, very interested in security, and I totally understand this aspect that fascinates you. And I was wondering, when we talk about psychology and security, I feel that this is a field that is predestined for women, actually. You know, I think women who are good with communication and also very empathetic, I think the word is in English, are actually made for this field. But before we start encouraging women to do the same thing that we do, I would like to just take a step back and ask you, how did you experience becoming a woman in tech? Because that's also one of the aspects. You said you went back to university at 29, and of course everyone was younger, but how was the ratio female to male? How did you feel about that? Did you feel like, I have this friend who is doing a survey, it's called We Are Not Aliens, but did you feel like an alien there, or did you feel at home?
Yeah, I kind of felt like an alien. I mean, in one way, it was great to be surrounded by a lot of people with the similar interests. You know, I thought, wow, I'm not the only one, because before that, I didn't know many people in tech. And if I talked about it to family or friends, they would just make fun of me, like, oh, you're such a geek, oh, you're such a nerd, or how can you look at code all day? That would bore me. I can't do that. So it was nice to be around like minds. But yeah, indeed, I did feel like quite a bit of an alien, aside from the age gap. There was, I mean, thankfully, people couldn't really tell, but still, there's that maturity level difference. Um, but yeah, but I did notice a big difference. Like, for example, I remember when I went into the lecture hall, I think it was at least over 100, what looked like men anyway, over 100 men, and and just me, and as far as I could tell, just me and a few other women, maybe three or something like that, as far as I know, because I actually got to know all of them. So and yeah, it was a bit scary, especially the first year. I wasn't quite comfortable, and in the first year I felt like, you know, I kind of felt like I didn't really belong there. And that imposter syndrome started kicking in already. That feeling of, oh, I don't really, you know, I'm not like them. I'm, you know, I'm too different. I'm not made for this. I'm not going to make it in this field. And, but especially it was sometimes having that fear of even raising my hand to answer a question, because honestly, I was scared that if I answered the question wrong, that it would make me look bad in front of everyone. Not only that, but that I would confirm this, that it would confirm the stereotype that, oh yeah, see, haha, women are not meant for this. Like she doesn't know the answer. Women suck at this. And so I was so afraid of fulfilling that stereotype that I would just keep my mouth shut and just not say anything for fear of appearing, you know, stupid or something like that. I didn't want to confirm those stereotypes. And so yeah, so I noticed that that affected it. And then also there was a bit of mansplaining, as it's called, you know, like me knowing something really well, but then someone explaining it to me like as if I don't know it, just
Yeah.
because of my appearance. And I've had that a few times. But I would say the most blatant, I guess, kind of the most blatant thing that I felt was when I was in a student bar, and I was wearing a skirt with heels. And honestly, I almost never went out like that. But anyway, I happened to look very feminine that night. And there was a guy, another student, who asked me, oh, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a student. And he asked, what do you study? And I said, computer science. And his first reaction was to laugh in my face, literally just laugh.
Really?
Yeah, he just laughed. He looked at me and he started laughing, and I was like, I was so caught off guard, like, why is he laughing? But in a condescending manner, you know, like really, like, yeah. And then he said, oh, he laughed some more, and he said, you should just give up. You should give up on that field. You're never gonna make it in IT. Literally. And that was 1 year before I got the offer from VMware to join us. So yeah.
Well, look who's laughing now.
Exactly. I thought.
Okay, this is a I think this is one of the worst specimens of misogynist men that you can actually meet. Luckily, they're not that frequent and not that common, no. But yeah, of course, you can encounter men like that. Sadly. I mean, you touched on something that's obviously an issue for a lot of women in our field. We're often alone in a room or with very few other women. And there's the issue that if you don't see someone who looks like you, that you might feel out of place. That is something that we shouldn't underestimate, I think. So
true.
Yeah. And then you touched on imposter syndrome. That is, of course, also an issue for a lot of us, sadly. But I think knowing that other women have the same problem makes it easier, because it obviously doesn't have a lot to do with what you're good at or what your skills are. It's more self-doubt and the issue that in our society, people outwardly seem more confident than they actually are. So you just see the facade, no? Yeah, so wow. But what you also show is that if you have a passion for a field, you can actually overcome all these obstacles and then go on to be really successful, because you worked for VMware, which is already one of the biggest software companies, and you're now at Microsoft, which is another one of I think it's actually the biggest software company in the world, which goes to show that someone who has the drive and the interest can go and become really successful in this field. And maybe you just want to summarize how you then went from the university to being at Microsoft as a security specialist, which is amazing.
Yeah, sure. So just quickly, yeah. So then in my second year, I was looking for the placement year, which is a 1-year internship that you do before your final year at uni here in the UK, optionally. And so I decided, obviously, I need to get experience in this field. And so I applied to VMware. I got the job, which I couldn't believe, but yeah, so I got that one. And just before I started it, I did that pen testing internship, in security. So that actually started just before the VMware internship. So then I did that, and then at the end of my VMware internship, so my 1 year was coming up to an end, and I had kind of built a brand on being known to be like a security, SE or security kind of go-to. I was one of the SEs here in the UK who loves security. There's many of us. I wasn't the only one, obviously, but I got kind of known for it, and I did like a security training program internally for VMware employees, and so I got kind of recognized for that. People said that it was useful, and I had actually reached out to the Carbon Black team after the acquisition, and so I had gotten to know them and kind of just align on vision and strategy and things like that. And then it turns out that I guess they really wanted me at the end of my internship. And so anyway, so then that's how I then pivoted into the Carbon Black security business unit at VMware. And that's when I secured a full-time permanent role after the internship. So normally, after that internship, I would have had to go back to uni to finish my final year. But VMware made a big exception for me, which normally they don't do. I just have to say that, but they made a big exception. They said, okay, because of your age and your experience and transferable skills, they said, we'll make an exception. And so I got that full-time role so I could stay on to VMware. But that meant that I had to then change my studies to part-time. So I'm actually now finishing up my degree still. I just have my dissertation to do and one other class, and then that's it. And then I finally get my bachelor's. So anyway, but just to summarize, I then actually got kind of approached by Microsoft a few months ago, and then honestly, it was a hard choice because I felt on one hand, I had been at VMware for over 1.5 years, and I felt that loyalty and my career was building up, and I thought, oh no, I saw myself at VMware for 10 years. But then on the other hand, I also saw this amazing opportunity that, how it's hard to turn down an opportunity like Microsoft in security. And I thought, so I did a lot of soul searching and thinking, and I decided that for me in my career, it was in my stage in life, it just made sense for me. So yeah, that's how I ended up at Microsoft.
And I would agree. I want to congratulate you on this new job. It's actually amazing that you got that.
Thank you.
So we talked a little bit about your background, talked about your education and how you got to be where you are. And maybe before we wrap up, you would like to tell me what you would recommend to young women looking to go into the field. Is there any tips you have, anything you would like to say to them? If like you, they're on the brink of making a decision and they're not sure if they're welcome in the field, would you tell them do it, or would you not recommend it? Just whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I would say first of all that I know what it's like to not be sure and to think that you don't belong there, and that you feel that you fear that it's a mistake. But definitely try, go for it, because honestly, the worst case is that you've tried. At least you gave it a go. But I would say it's totally worth it. IT is a field with many fields within itself that is just booming right now. It's just becoming more and more important. And another thing I would say is definitely don't doubt yourself. You really do belong there, no matter what your background is, no matter what your skill set is. I feel like there really kind of is a place for everybody in IT, and whether you're a deeply technical person or not yet, just don't be afraid. Just remember, everybody started somewhere. No one was born knowing how to code or knowing how to do security and things like that. And also, it's not just about the technical things, right? There's even sales. There's all sorts of fields. So you can do any kind of job within IT, and I think that's another amazing thing. So yeah, so definitely believe in yourself. Don't listen to the rare ones who tell you that you don't belong. Just prove them wrong and just go for it.
Yeah, wise words. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I can just draw a line under that and say, Thank you for talking to me, Celine. It was a nice half hour, I think, maybe a little longer. Thank you for spending that with me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you so much. And thanks for your time.
Bye, Celine.
Bye.